Ghosts are everywhere. They're in our closets, under our beds, in the halls of our schools, and they're in our own homes. But one thing we know for sure is that ghosts don't just walk among us, but talk among us as well. And not all ghost voices are friendly. Sometimes they're extremely sinister. Welcome back, I'm here. Today we're going to be taking a look at Voices of the Dead, where the truth was scarier than fiction. The Ghost Next Door. We've heard this one before, so I won't bore you with the details. The old creaky house, the new family moving in, and the unexplained sounds keeping them up at night. It's a classic haunting trope, and it works because it's believable. One wrong floorboard, and you might think you've got yourself a ghost. Well, for Emily Rose, she knew she had a ghost in her home. But only after she received a visit from a priest did she realize how dangerous he was. She and her family could hear him walking around the house at night, shaking the beds and even talking to her young son. At first, Emily thought it was a wonderful experience. She felt connected to the history of the house, which was built in 1890. But then things started to get weird. Items would go missing, only to reappear days later in strange places. Doors would slam shut when no one was home, and her crucifix began to spin wildly, even though there was no breeze. Then Father Patrick of St. Edward Catholic Church agreed to perform an exorcism of the home. In the middle of the ceremony, the temperature plummeted and the crucifix began spinning again. When Patrick prayed that the spirit would leave the house peacefully, the ghost replied, "Never," and made everyone in the room feel violently ill. Emily realized that the ghost wasn't friendly, but the worst was yet to come. As the ghost approached her bed, she turned to see the specter standing over her, its face contorted in rage. Before she knew it, she was floating out of her body, and the ghost was upon her. That's when she saw what he looked like, or rather what he wasn't. He had no head. This apparition dragged her soul to hell, and she could do nothing to stop it. Just before she lost consciousness, she felt the ghost grab her heart and devour it. Now she walks the earth as a vessel for the ghost, doomed to travel the world until she can find a replacement heart. That's right, kids. If you don't listen to your mother and eat your vegetables, a ghost will steal your heart. Words from beyond. Most people aren't lucky enough to speak to a ghost, let alone receive messages from beyond the grave. But for James Haggerty, his late wife found a way to get his attention even after death. One day, while visiting his wife's grave, James noticed that the letters in the inscription on her gravestone spelled out a message. After taking a closer look, he realized it was a set of coordinates. Not wanting to be too hasty, James waited 2 weeks before returning to the site. He brought along some friends, each armed with a metal detector. What they found was a small box, about 3 feet underground. Inside was a cassette tape, which James brought home and played. On it was a message recorded by his wife, warning him that if he didn't get help, their son would die. At first, James thought she was referring to their young son, who had recently been sick. But when he put the boy in the hospital, he recovered quickly. So what was his wife trying to tell him? Was it another child? Maybe a grandchild? Was she warning him of an accident waiting to happen? The tape never gave him an answer. Instead, it repeated the same ominous line over and over. There's no time left. Years later, James still doesn't know what the message meant. Maybe it was his wife's way of saying goodbye one last time. Ghostly growl. There are many places where ghosts like to hang out. Graveyards, battlefields, and haunted houses are just a few. But what about places where unspeakable acts have taken place? The Amityville Horror House is a great example. Even though more than 40 years have passed since the infamous massacre, people still report hearing gunshots echoing from within its walls. But sometimes the location isn't as important as the type of crime committed there. Take, for instance, the Danvers State Hospital in Massachusetts, which operated from 1878 to 1991. It used to be a top-secret facility for the criminally insane. And as you can imagine, a lot of heinous acts took place behind its doors. Today, it stands abandoned, and visitors brave enough to enter the building report hearing the cries of patients who were experimented on and tortured inside. One sound that keeps visitors up at night is a blood-curdling growl. Nobody knows where it comes from or what it means. But many believe it's the spirit of a patient who was lobotomized without proper anesthetic and spent the rest of his life in pain. Perhaps he's just angry, or maybe he's hungry for revenge. The vanishing voice. We've said it before, and we'll say it again. Never trust a ghost. Sure, They may seem friendly at first, but most of them have sinister intentions. Take, for instance, the story of Helen Acton, who heard the voice of an angel calling her name every single day. It was always the same, a sweet, gentle voice that seemed to come from the stars themselves. Though the voice didn't bother her at first, she soon began to worry about the intentions of whoever was out there. She asked for guidance, and the voice told her to go to a certain church. Once she arrived, she was greeted by a man in a black suit. He introduced himself as Father O'Leary and invited her into his office. That's when he began asking her questions about her personal life. But Helen was suspicious. She knew something was wrong. And when she tried to leave, Father O'Leary blocked the door and said, "You must stay." When Helen screamed, he lunged at her with a knife. Somehow she managed to escape and never saw the priest again. But she couldn't escape the voice. It continued to call to her, growing louder and more insistent than ever before. To this day, Helen isn't sure if the voice came from a good or evil place. The grave mistake. Who says ghosts are scary? Sure, most of them are malevolent spirits looking to drag you down to hell with them. But some are just misunderstood, like the ghost of Mary Celeste, who haunts the streets of Savannah, Georgia. Legend has it that she died after falling in love with a man her father disapproved of. One day, Mary's father returned home early and caught her and her lover together. In a fit of rage, he shot them both dead. Now she wanders the earth searching for her one true love. Some say she's trying to warn other young lovers that no matter how strong their feelings are, nothing is worth dying for. Others say she's just lonely. Hearing the mournful cry of a ghost is bad enough, but when it starts knocking on your car window, you know you're in trouble. That is exactly what happened to Larry Jackson and his two passengers one night when they were driving through Savannah. They were heading home from a night out, when suddenly they spotted a woman in a Victorian nightgown flagging them down. At first, they ignored her, assuming she was just trying to hitch a ride. But when she began banging on the window, they rolled it down and she began screaming at them to get out. Panicked, Larry floored it and sped away, but the ghost wouldn't let them go. She began running alongside the car, reaching out with skeletal fingers, trying to claw her way inside. Eventually, she stopped, and the car shook violently as if hit by a phantom hand. Larry and his friends didn't stop until they reached a well-lit gas station. Looking back, they saw the ghostly woman standing in the middle of the road, arms outstretched, beckoning them to come back. Do you believe in ghosts? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for watching.